So money sometimes is overvalued and sometimes undervalued. When you ask people what is important in your life, they're not likely to say money is first. They're going to say family and friends and work and health and religion. And that is all true. But you need money for all of them. You cannot really sustain yourself and a family without money. And so money underlies everything. And so money is important in that way. But money also uh, is really important on its own. That is, money just allows us to spend, allows us to live, allows us to replace the car or fix it when the time comes. And money also provides that peace of mind. And money is also important in terms of the social status that it conveys. So it is important to realize that you need money for all the good things in life, but that money is not well-being on its own.
Welcome to Talking Billions. We talk about big ideas, big inspirations, big topics. We take on the hardest topic of all, money. How to make it, save it, keep it. But our conversations lead us to an even bigger question, what it means to live a rich life beyond money. My guests share their practices, principles, and evergreen wisdom. I'm your host, Bogumil Baranowski, author, TEDx speaker, and investment advisor to wealth creators with patient capital and an infinite investment horizon. I work with families and individuals who aspire to grow wealth over a lifetime and generations through disciplined, thoughtful investments in durable quality businesses while giving money meaning. Join me on this quest to unearth and share the wisdom of the ages. Let me share with you the podcast program disclosure statement. Blue Infinitas Capital LLC is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by the firm's employees and podcast guests on the show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Blue Infinitas Capital. All the statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. The information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. None of what you're about to hear is investment advice. My guest today is Meir Statman. He is a professor of finance, author, expert in behavioral finance. We talk about his newest book, A Wealth of Well-Being, a holistic approach to behavioral finance. I learned a lot, and I trust that you will too. Please help me welcome Professor Statman. Well, it's a real pleasure to have you with me. I read your book, and I loved it, and I shared it with you. And we connected a few weeks ago, and I was looking forward to having you on the show and talking about your experience, your research, and very thoughtful observations about the world of money that became part of really everything that happens around us. I want to jump right in, and you know that I like that question, so I want to ask you about those early days, your childhood upbringing, and how you think those early experiences shaped your curiosity, your career, your passions that led you to where you are today.
Well, I'm a child of Holocaust survivors. My parents escaped from Poland into the Soviet Union in 1939 as the Nazis were advancing into Poland. And they traveled to Siberia and then to Uzbekistan, where they met and fell in love and got married. And I was born in 1947, in a displaced persons camp, as they call refugee camps. And we came to Israel in 1949. And this is where I grew up. And of course, all my experiences are from there as a child and as a young adult. I was 26 when I came to the United States to study for the PhD at Columbia University, and here I am more than 50 years later. So, I was very, very fortunate to have my parents in many ways, and some of them have to do with being guys about money. One thing that I've learned that many Americans don't know, because we are so fortunate in the United States, is that risk is more than financial risk, and surely more than investment risk. That is, think about my parents. They were 14 years old. They were teenagers when they escaped to the Soviet Union. And that experience tells me that true risk are risk in life, and there are some risks that you cannot hedge against. It is just the way it is. That is, even people who were wealthy, of course, which my parents were not, and had their money in Swiss banks, could not reach them and could not save them from terrible fate. And so I've learned that. And that stayed with me. And I've also learned good money habits that I convey to my two daughters and I convey to my students. One is that you have to balance saving and spending. My mom used to say, spend money, but don't waste it. I remember going with her when I was perhaps in fourth grade to the bookstore and to buy the books that I would use in the coming year. And when the owner of the store summed it up, my mom asked whether it's possible to get a discount. And I was kind of embarrassed because I thought that bargaining is unbecoming. But the store owner said, that is okay. It is perfectly okay to ask for a discount, and gave my mom a 10% discount. And that kind of taught me, it is possible gently to do the right thing in terms of money, not waste it. Asking for a discount is not wasting it. And my dad, I've never had kind of pocket money. I just had what I needed, which was really modest. I had what my friends had, and they were very similar to me in that their parents also went through the Holocaust. But just like any kid, I wanted a bike, and my parents were reluctant to get me a bike because they're afraid that I'm going to break my bones, which of course I did. But then one day I came home and there was a bike that was right next to the entrance door, a new bike, and I was excited and I was curious, and I asked my dad how much it cost. And he said the equivalent of $1, the smallest Israeli currency. And you see, people ask me, my students ask me, why? Why didn't he tell me? And the reason was really very simple. It's for the same reason that when we give a gift, we take off the price tag, because it is unbecoming. So I did not really learn to manage money and to value money by parents who were stingy and who tried to manage me, but rather by this gentle way of watching their behavior. So my dad opened the savings account for me, and any money that I put in, he would double. And I did that for my daughters as well. So not all, when as you as you saw in the book, not all people are fortunate to be able to follow in the footsteps of their parents. Some see parents who are wasteful. Some see parents who are arguing about money. One is a spender and one is a saver and getting to divorce. And so it is really important to watch parents and learn good lessons to adopt and bad lessons to stay away from.
Almost what I'm hearing is that it's better to show what to do than to tell what to do. Is that how you look at it?
It is, yeah, it is. I mean, that is, my mom said, really, spend money, but don't waste it. And so the words matter as well. But mostly it is the behavior that we watch, and that behavior kind of stays with us. And so I had everything that I needed, but then when I was planning to come to the United States for my studies, at some point it looked like I would not have enough money to do so. And I asked my dad for a loan, and he said, I would have loved to do that, but you have a younger brother and sister. I gave you money when you were married for a down payment on a house. I want to do the same thing for your brother and sister, and I just don't have more than that. And so I could see that it is, there are limits to what parents can do, but it also told me that if you can, especially when kids are young, meaning in their 20s and 30s, this really is when they need the money. And so it is really good, I say, to give with a warm hand rather than, as some people do, they say, let them wait until I'm gone at 95 and they're 65 and then they can get the money. Well, it's always nice to get a chunk of money when you're 65, but surely a fraction of that would have been better when you were 25.
I like the sound of that, and I remember it from your book, Giving with a Warm Hand. And I work with families with multi-generational wealth. I manage money for them, and I realized how important it is the way we give money and then how we receive it. But if it's given with a warm hand, it has a certain different emotional charge, and it's easier to receive. And I like the idea of not waiting until somebody's 65 and maybe preparing them for it or handing some of it earlier over so they can use it when they really, really need it at a different point in time. Your book, it's called A Wealth of Well-Being, a Holistic Approach to Behavioral Finance. It's a wonderful read that adds a whole dimension to the element of money in our life. And there's a longer quote that I want to bring up, and I'm curious about your thoughts about it. You write how financial well-being comes when we can meet current and future financial obligations, absorb financial setbacks, and keep driving toward financial goals, such as retirement. Life well-being comes when we live satisfying lives full of meaning and purpose, with the emphasis on the meaning and purpose throughout your book. Can you talk about that? It's such a beautiful way to frame that idea.
Yes. So I think, so there are three kinds or three components to life well-being. An is experience, the emotions that we feel at the moment, happiness, sadness, anger. One is an overall assessment of our life, evaluative well-being. When you think about your life on steps from 0 to 10, where 0 is the worst and 10 is the best, where do you stand? And the other really, which is the most important, is really meaning. That is, when you think about your life, especially as you age, you have to ask yourself, or people ask themselves, what have I done why is it that I am in this earth, on this earth? And my dad would say that people are judged by how many people come to their funeral, and not just to verify that they really did. It is really the point of it really is, how many lives have you touched? How many lives have you improved? Of course, your children will remember you hopefully with good emotions. But I hope that some of my students remember me, and I hope that many others, friends, will remember me, and especially people that we have done good for. My wife has even more meaning than I do, because she is a volunteer at the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. So our older daughter, as you could see in the book, lives with a bipolar illness, a mental illness, and that, of course, was difficult for us, and so on. And NAMI helped us once we found it many years ago. And Nava, my wife, has been a volunteer there ever since, and she has helped so many people, so many families, and that is adding meaning to her life, and by proxy, adding values, adding meaning to my own life. That really is what matters to us. And when we are able, and we are always able in some way to help others, whether it is helping in physical, in just whatever, chauffeuring their kids to school if parents cannot do that. Later on, hopefully, we've accumulated some money that enables us to also find meaning by giving it away to causes that matter to us.
So that makes me think of something that somebody shared with me, not once, I think multiple times, that money solves only money problems. And when I really think about it, I think there's more to it. And in your book, I saw a little bit more insight into that way of thinking. You say that the domain of finances has a special place among the domains of life well-being, because it is important on its own and because it underlies all other domains. And it made me really pause. Can you talk more about it? So in a way,
sure.
And I don't disagree that money plays a role in more domains that we're willing to admit.
That is right. Yeah. So money sometimes is overvalued and sometimes undervalued. When you ask people what is important in your life, they're not likely to say money is first. They're going to say family and friends and work and health and religion. And that is all true. But you need money for all of them. You cannot really sustain yourself and a family without money. And you cannot, have health, unable to go to a physician when something is painful, and by the time you go, it might well be too late if you don't have money. And so money underlies everything. And so money is important in that way. But money also is really important on its own. That is, money just allows us to spend, allows us to live, allows us to replace the car or fix it when the time comes. And money also provides that peace of mind that if the car breaks down, as my wife's car just broke down yesterday, we thought that it's mine or it's $1,200. Well, what can you do? And the thing is that for us, fortunately, it will have no effect on our standard of living, on how we can spend on other things. But I know that is not true for many people. And so money is important by itself for that peace of mind. And money is also important in terms of the social status that it conveys. So we are all interested in social status, and social status comes from many things. It comes from, say, university degrees. It comes from our professions. It comes from our roles as parents. But it also comes from money. And so it is both important and not important. And so it is important to realize that you need money for all the good things in life, but that money is not well-being on its own.
I like the sound of that. And I'm thinking of the clients I work with. In many cases, they have substantial wealth. And sometimes just knowing that it's there, it's invested, it's available if they need it, not even using it, has a very big, powerful presence, importance in their life, that they know they can lean on it if they have to. And they might never use it, might be passed on to the next generation. It might have been already passed on from the previous generation, but the presence of it gives them a huge peace of mind. In your book, you introduce 4 kinds of capital, which I really like. You talk about the financial, social, cultural, and personal. Could you explain what they are?
Yes, so we are talking a lot about the financial capital and how it is important. Social capital refers to your circle of friends and acquaintances. And of course, it is important. It is important whether you are wealthy or poor. If you are poor, many times family and friends will help you in a tough spot. The car might have broken down. You cannot fix it now. The kids have to go to school, or you have to go to see the doctor. A friendly neighbor is going to take you there. A friend is going to take you if you have to undergo colonoscopy and they say that somebody has to pick you up afterwards. It is good to have a friend who can pick you up. Not all have that. So social capital is important, and social capital is important also for people with higher income. And friends don't have to be really very close friends. They can be acquaintances. They can be people who you went to college with, and now they are, say, executives in a company or professors, and you just lost your job. Well, you can call Joe and say, hey, I've lost my job. Is there anything that you can suggest? And they might say, well, we don't really have anything here, but I can refer you to somebody else at some other company, and I will surely be happy to write a letter of recommendation for you. Or if your son or daughter is applying to go to college, you talk to a professor and say, what is going to catch the eyes of admissions officers that will give my children better chances. And so it is important to have close friends that you can disclose your pains to and your joys. And it is also important to just have a broad network of people that you can call on when needed, and who can call you when they need it. When it comes to cultural capital is about knowing how to behave in the environment that you are in by the cultural norms. I'm an immigrant in this country, and so are you. And so we remember how when we arrived, we tried to make sense of the culture of the natives. I think of myself as being an anthropologist, making sense of what do they mean by I cannot afford this? Do they mean that I really literally don't have the money to buy it, or do they simply mean that it makes no sense for me to buy it? And so there are those small things and large, and I mentioned before the issue of giving with a warm hand or a cold one. People vary in that. And so you have to get kind of a sense of the cultural cues of what is acceptable and what is not, what is good and what is bad. And then you have a personal capital. It is wonderful to be tall and handsome. And so I tell myself, when I'm born again, I'm going to be tall and handsome. Now I just have to make do with who I am. If you have a personality that is engaging, that is outgoing, that is extroverted to some extent, you're better off than somebody who is entirely introverted. Anxiety is useful in moving you forward, in making sure that you know where your wallet is and where your passport is. But too much anxiety, of course, is bad. So these are all aspects of personal capital that matter. And so if you think about capital as a whole, it has those four parts and more. That is a personal capital also includes your health, for example, and the job and career that you have, and so on.
So many great ideas. And of course, it's wonderful to have a friend that will pick you up and be a friend that will be there if you have to pick up somebody. I was smiling a lot and laughing to myself when you were talking about the cultural capital, because you and I experienced the path of appearing somewhere as a newbie, as a new arrival, and then looking around and trying to figure out a new world. And I found myself in that position more than once. I was a student in Paris, and I got elected to the student board of the school, and I was the only foreign student sitting there with professors and alumni and the board members, and I thought, I don't really belong in this room, but somebody thought I should be in this room voicing the opinions of the other students. And a year or two later, I was at an investment firm, my first role in New York, and I looked around and I thought to myself, I'm the only person not born in the US sitting at this desk, at this big table, and recommending a stock to people that grew up in this country, went to schools in this country, and know so much more about the ins and outs of the business here that I'm trying to catch up and keep up with. But I think that perspective gave me some sort of an advantage, because I remained an outsider in a way, so I can see things from a different perspective than my colleagues that grew up around New York, in the New York suburb, know all the brands by heart, and I'm just learning them and seeing them almost like a Martian that arrived from a different planet. So it's it's a fun experience.
I know what you're yeah. My experience is really the same. We have an advantage of knowing at least two cultures, and of course people who grew up in the United States, of course, when they travel abroad, they see different cultures, different notions, how you show or don't show your status. In the United States, they say, if you think about kind of sophisticated investments like hedge funds or private equity and so on, in the United States, you really cannot brag about your wealth. That is, you cannot go to somebody that you were just introduced to and say, hi, I am Meir Statman and I'm a rich man. That is gauche. But if we're talking about investments, you can just drop that you're into hedge funds. And I know that you are rich because you have to be a qualified investor in hedge fund investment. You cannot invest $3,000 as you invest in a mutual fund. You have to invest big dollars. And so you just told me that you're a rich man, but you did it within the culture, within the American culture of what is okay in signaling wealth and what is
the acceptable language, the acceptable communication, and different ways. I jokingly say that I was born Polish, became European because Poland joined the EU when I was an adult, and then I became American as an adult by choice because I made New York my home. But I think we both collected different experiences on the way, and I think they continue to help us in various ways. So I see it as a blessing. Although at the beginning it felt like I can't keep up with the sports analogies that my friends are throwing around, that I can't can't understand what's going on. I still have a hard time understanding baseball, but that's for another episode. I feel like it's one of those.
We are in the same league, Bogomil.
Soccer, I get it. Baseball, I don't know. But
I do too.
In your book, you describe various emotions. And I always knew of envy and jealousy, but you introduce a few more that add a lot of color and flavor to the experience of how we perceive other people's standing. That's how I look at it. So you talk about envy. I hope I'm pronouncing right, but you talk about Glücksschmerz, Schadenfreude, Freudenfreude. What are they?
Well, we have to begin with the fact that we care not just about how much money we have and what social status we have. Social status is relative to other people. And so when you see a friend, somebody who worked with you, you were equal, and suddenly he gets a prize or he joins a startup and becomes wealthy. Envy is natural to feel. You can say that it's an ugly feeling, but it is also a very natural feeling. And the thing really is to say, well, maybe that person was lucky, or maybe he was very talented. Maybe I should learn from him or her rather than sit stewing because I am now lower in social status. Conversely, Schadenfreude is when you watch somebody who say you didn't like, and that person stumbles on something. When you see somebody who you say, whoa, how is it that they buy this beautiful house and fancy car and go on terrific vacations, and I am not, and then you find that it was all financed with credit cards, and now they have to sell their house and move to a small place and so on. It is hard not to feel, see, I told you, and now you thought that you are so much higher than me, even if they didn't brag. You just felt kind of inferior. You just feel just a touch better. And then there are the things that have to do with whether you are really happy for somebody got a promotion, and you are happy for them, even though it means that now they are higher in status than you are, and then you talk about situations where, say, you are, say, working in the same field, and a friend, somebody you know very well, somebody you think you're equal to, he was now chosen to be on a board, kind of like the story that you told, and you were not. And so if I hear that you, Bogomil, got that kind of a wonderful position, well, I just know you as a colleague. But if it is somebody who I know very well, who is kind of like me, who competes with me, and he won and I did not, that is can be painful. There is a famous experiment that looked at people standing on the medals stand in the Olympic Games, and so the winner of gold is smiling. The winner of bronze is smiling, but not the winner of silver, because the winner of silver can imagine that if not for that fraction of a second, he would be standing in the number one position. And the bronze says, at least I won some medal. There were so many people who were running the same race, and they're not in the stand at all. And so learning to calibrate that is important. Envy does not really do you any good It does not really move you to achieve more. It just is a painful emotion that is natural but not useful. And to the extent that we can, we should avoid it.
No, it's very helpful, and I think envy can get in the way of happiness, and knowing what other people accomplish and comparing ourselves can get us in trouble in today's world, especially with social media. We know so much more about the lives and accomplishments of others than ever before. I have 2 points here. One, when I think of the money game, if you want to call it a game, one of the investors that I admired, Tom Gaynor, mentioned how investing is a different game than Olympics, for example, that you brought up with the 3 medals. We don't remember who was the 4th one. We just don't remember. But in investing, if you're sitting in a room like Berkshire Hathaway meeting in Omaha, and you have somebody that has $100 billion, and then somebody who has $2-3 billion, like Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, right? Charlie won in his own game, although he had a fraction of what Warren has. So it's a different game. And I think it's nice to remind ourselves of that yes, our neighbor might have 50 million and I have 25, but in my own game, I won. But it's tricky because we start to compare. They can have a bigger house and more cars, I don't know, more beautiful trips. It's tricky to take, but you take away from your own happiness. And I want to bring up something that's in your book that I think it's really fascinating for any listener in the world, but especially those that don't know. In Norway, you mentioned, which is something I've heard somewhere before, it's publicly disclosed how much you earn. And you mentioned in the book that it was hard to find it. Now it's public, it's online. You don't have to ask. You can just look up the neighbor that has this new car, and you're wondering how in the world I'm not driving the same car. Did that help people get happier, knowing how much the neighbor is making?
Well, one, it is really natural for people to want to know how much the neighbors earn. Many times they'll regret that knowledge, but
Yes.
They called it kind of a pornography of sort, where you get to see views that otherwise are hidden in people's bedrooms. And so when you ask yourself, how much does my friend earn, or my neighbor, or my competitor? And essentially you can see their tax return, and you can see how much income they generate and how much wealth they have. What it does, one, you might kind of get a sense of, wow, I'm doing well. I thought that this fellow is richer than me, and I find out that in fact I am richer. I'm higher in social status. It makes me feel better. Or when I find that he is even richer than I thought, and much richer than me, it makes me a bit miserable. And so it is really important, as you just say, to find your comparison group that is right for you. Now, you cannot really avoid family as comparison groups. You cannot avoid friends as comparison group, co-workers as comparison groups. But I don't compare myself to Warren Buffett. I worked with a money manager who is a billionaire, and we were just working like two academics side by side, writing papers. Well, I'm not a billionaire, but I tell myself I'm not really comparing myself to him. He has an undergraduate degree. I have a PhD. I am comparing myself to fellow academics. And so it is really important, as they say, it is important to know when to say enough, when to say I have reached it. And fortunately, as I age, it is easier for me to do that for two reasons. One, I actually have more money than I had when I was a young man. And second, because I don't care about things that bounded me when I was young. if somebody bought a Mercedes-Benz, I didn't really want a Mercedes-Benz, but I just wanted to have enough money so I can buy a Mercedes-Benz without uh, being squeezed otherwise. Now, people can buy Bentleys and Rolls Royces all they want and so on. So can I. But it really does not bother me. In fact, I find it ridiculous when people are trying to impress other people with cars and clothes and the like.
Did you ever enjoy spending money?
Oh yeah, of course I enjoy spending money. You know, um, so some years ago, in 2016, I remember that my wife and I were going to Israel, and we were waiting for an upgrade to business class, and it would have cost us some $600, I think, each, plus miles. But we were
Mm-hmm.
not upgraded. and so we kind of caught ourselves and we said, this is stupid. We are sufficiently old and we are sufficiently well off to
Mm-hmm.
buy those business class tickets. They are priced outrageously. but if it is a long flight, like from the United States to Israel, uh, we buy them. And we say, we're not shortchanging ourselves and we're not shortchanging others. We support our children, we support our community, and we can also treat ourselves to some pleasures. I have a friend who says, if you fly economy, your son-in-law will fly first class. so, so, it is nice to leave money to your daughter and son-in-law, but don't leave like a miser and leave it all to them.
And on that note, I want to bring up the topic of saving and spending. That's why I asked the question, because in your book, you spend some time on that topic and you talk about tools of framing, mental accounting, and self-control. I noticed that either people are very comfortable and it's very intuitive for them to save, or it's a real journey. I feel like we're falling into two buckets and making it from one to the other. And I mean either. It's difficult for somebody that has a hard time spending. Like the fact that you even thought, should I spend it? Should I use the miles? You're going through the process. Some people would just swipe the card, not even think if they had the money, right? But you were going through the process and you realize, I can actually afford to fly business on this flight. So tell me about those tools of framing, mental accounting, and self-control that we can use, I guess, with the purpose of saving some money at the end.
Yeah, so think about how we do things. That is, you might have a 401k or 403b or just a private savings account, and you learn as a boy early on that you have to think about the future. You're conscientious, and you need some tools to help you with that. And one important tool is to separate money into income and capital and have the rule of spend income but don't dip into capital. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you are working, you move money from your income, as in wages, into a 401k or a 403b or an IRA or whatever it is. But then now that income becomes capital. And now you say you cannot touch that capital. Don't dip into capital except when you are retired and you have some special needs. And so people who are good at accumulating good chunks of money without kind of having sudden riches because they joined the right startup or won the lottery, they do it as I did it, by having a steady job, saving, and not dipping into capital when I did not have to. And so you're really having that self-control of not touching that money is central in the times when you're working, in the times when you have to save. The problem occurs later on when people are so good at saving, people are so good at self-control, People are
Right.
so good at not dipping into capital that they forget that money is to be spent. Now, not all of it, but money has to be spent. And so I'm sure that you see in your practice uh, lots of people who have accumulated uh, millions, lots of millions, way more than they would spend in their lifetime, but somehow they now gain more pleasure from saving than from spending. And you have to kind of get them to spend reasonably.
Mm.
My wife, my mother-in-law, when she was old, she had a sofa that was rickety. It needed to be replaced, and she didn't want to replace because she said it's perfectly okay. Eventually, my wife and her two brothers bought her a new sofa and tossed out the old one. And then she smiled and she said, "Well, you are dipping into your inheritance." Indeed. But that sometimes you really have to kind of get your parents when they're old and have saved and have those resources uh, to relax a bit. Take a trip in business class. Uh, Ask yourself what brings you joy, and it is different things to different people. I say if you put me on a cruise around the world, after 7 days or maybe earlier, I would jump overboard. That's not for me, but I actually get a lot of pleasure from donating money to good causes. Uh, because I have a sense that this really is doing good for others and in the process doing good for myself. So that really is important to me. So you have to ask all the people what will bring you joy. And when I talk about it to financial advisors and investors, uh, they say, you are describing my parents. It is really so common for all the people who have the means to to some of them really take it all the way down to miserliness, but for others they're just not spending what is necessary. Yes, you have a rug, you have a carpet in your house. It really is from 1980. It really is still orange color. It is time to change it. And to the extent that an advisor as well as children can help, that is wonderful. And really, as a side note, it is important for advisors to involve children in that planning, because lots of children leave the advisor of their parents when their parents are gone. They've never developed
Mhm.
any relationship and so on. They don't really understand what that advisor did for them, or their parents for that matter. Uh, by perhaps persuading parents to share their wealth when with a warm hand, or perhaps just being aware of what the kids are, uh, and perhaps meeting them. It is going to be a good way to create a bond that will keep them as clients when their parents are gone.
It's part of what I do. I try to involve all the generations, and I have a lot of fun with it, just seeing how we can all talk. And I knew the grandparents, I know the parents, I know the grandkids. And you're right that it's very important to build a relationship with the next generation, because they're the ones that you're going to be working with. And they're the ones that will really benefit from that kind of multi-generational money. It's the parents are probably enjoying its presence, but it's the kids, as you said, with your son-in-law flying business. That's the next generation that will be enjoying really the benefits of what we're planting today. I want to ask you a question about something you also talk about in the book, which I would describe as being rich, feeling rich, looking rich, and the gap between present and aspired financial capital, which I think can be a source of happiness and unhappiness in life, because no matter how much we have, and I've been in rooms where people had substantial wealth, and I always notice that you can always find somebody in your circle that has more than you. There's no real limit to that. But it's a source of unhappiness. So let's talk about the present and aspired financial capital. What are they? How do we think about them?
So think about it in terms of what we know as the U curve, like the letter U, of well-being. And so when we are young adults and all the way to middle age, unless you are born rich and your parents are generous with you, you don't have enough money. Okay, so and I'm not talking about luxuries. I'm talking about simple things. You need money to diaper your baby. These are the small things. You need money for a down payment on a house. You need a car, even if not a new one. And so you aspire for more, and you work hard, and it makes you kind of miserable. That is, you don't just say, well, that is the way it is. You really concentrate on your career. You concentrate on your marriage. You concentrate on your studies before, and so you accumulate wealth that would serve you later. Now, what is important really is that life well-being then goes down from early adulthood to middle age, and it is kind of at the bottom in middle age. And then it tends to go up. And the reason is not because, I've become a billionaire. The reason is because my aspirations, even I had aspirations to be a billionaire. Now I say, this is silly, Meir. Okay, you have more than enough. You're going to leave money behind you anyway. And so what I do really is I reduce the gap between my aspirations and my situations, not by increasing my situation enough to reach my aspiration, but by reducing my aspirations. And if you do it right, that is, if you don't reduce your aspirations too early and say, studies are hard, maybe I'll just skip school and get a job paying minimum wage. You might be happy for a moment, but obviously, I hope you're going to regret it later on. And if you have instilled this value, this kind of thinking in your kids, then you are in a really fortunate position. I know that from our younger daughter, and we have established, my wife and I have established a substantial endowment for Santa Clara University, my university, to support the work of members of my finance department. So we didn't consult our children about that. We just did it. But then I told my younger daughter that, and I said, there's going to be plenty left for you. And she said, Dad, I already received my inheritance. And, objectively speaking, she got lots of money, for down payment and more, and annual gifts. And she sees lots of people around her who don't have that, who don't have wealthy parents who are generous with them. And it is so good that instead of saying, you're wealthy, give me more, she says, I've had enough. More than that, she now contributes, along with her husband, they contribute a substantial amounts to charity, to people who are less fortunate than they are. And as you can imagine, I don't know how I taught her to do that, but obviously she watched Nava and me and learned something from what we've been doing.
No, it's wonderful. And you brought up your daughters again, and I'm curious about the topic of women and money. And you bring it up in your book on a couple of occasions, married women leaving the decisions to men. I'm curious about the topic because many of my clients are women that are making decisions in many cases on their own. Can you talk about it? And also maybe some historical perspective, how those things have changed. And we forget that not long ago, women had even less of a say when it came to money, or less access to knowledge when it came to those topics.
Yeah, that is right. And, even today, many women clients complain that their advisors think of themselves as being ignorant, unable to manage money. When they come and speak to the advisor as a couple, the advisor looked at the man, speaking to the man as if that is what is important, and the wife just whatever is an adjunct. And of course, this more than annoys women. And so women are at least as competent. They are more responsible. They have greater self-control than men typically, and they are very good at acquiring knowledge. Now, some of them kind of say, "Well, that's not for me," and that really gets to the issue of traditions in marriage. Whereas we kind of talk about equality in marriage, I still say one of the funny aspects of American culture is this proposal. That is, a man goes on his knee and presents a diamond ring and says, "Will you marry me, Jane?" And then she is supposed to say, "Yes, dear," and she has to cry, and you say, "What kind of equality is that?" We didn't do that. We kind of, Nava and I kind of, at some point we were talking about that, and gradually kind of said, "Hey, we're going to get married. It is not just dating that we are involved with." And so it really is important for women to gain that self worth and knowledge to manage their financial affairs, to be aware of things and decide how to do it. In my household, I must say that I am the one who is taking the lead on financial issues. But in my younger daughter's case, it is she who does. She has really kind of learned many things by osmosis, including how to manage money, and she does it for the family, for her and for her husband. And so it is really important for advisors and for parents to raise their kids knowing that all of them, men or women, need to acquire knowledge and responsibility to be able to manage money properly.
I really like the sound of that, and I think that's what's happening already, and that's the future as well, that can make decisions on their own, and they actually, in some ways, I would dare to say that are more capable than men. I think men have too much of an ego that gets in the way of money and home finances sometimes. I think women have a more balanced, more patient approach at times than men can. Maybe it's too general to make a comment here, but that's my observations. I always value the feedback from both sides.
I'm a man who invests like a woman, which means I don't trade. So I have the right temperament, and that is common to women. Men trade too much.
Yes.
One woman really admonished me, and she said, "Well, I'm a woman and I trade a lot." And I say, "Good for you. If you enjoy it, good for you." I surely do not mean to insult you when I say that I'm a man who trades like a woman. you trade. I don't really know your portfolio, and I hope that you're successful. But if I know what the average is, I know that you probably are not.
Yeah, I'm a very patient, slow-moving investor. So if you want to label it, I would label it in a similar way that you labeled your own style. But I also think that women have a certain intuition, and that I really admire, and it comes up in so many situations. And I have to say that in my family, I learned a lot about money from my grandmother and how she thought about spending money, just the way you shared the stories about getting a discount at the store. That was my grandma walking around and looking for wanted quality, but she wanted the right price. And you can do it in a very polite, diplomatic way. But I always knew that she had a very clear understanding of the value of money. And I have an impression that she was running the home finances in my grandparents' house. That was my impression. I think she knew more than grandpa. So I give her a huge credit.
Good. And it's good that grandpa did not get in the way, and it did not
That's
say, I'm the man, so I deserve to do that. Because many men are very sensitive about that, and women, their wives are really massaging their egos without letting that husband spend too much money and do too many foolish things.
very much so. I think it sums up my grandparents' house. I'll ask more next time I have a chance. But I want to ask you about the relationship between time and money in life. And you have some interesting observations and studies in the book. You say how few people have all the time and all the money they want. Money squeeze is common, so is time squeeze. But then you also say that these two squeezes take different forms among the working class and the elite. So you add another layer to it. Can you talk about it? I'm fascinated with the concept of time and money.
Yes, yes. So among the working class, among the middle class, there really is a trade-off, a conflict between time and money. That is, a person, a woman or a man might have a full-time job, but it does not pay a lot. And then they also are a driver for Uber, or they fix cars for the neighbors at some fee. So these people are really squeezed for time. They may have the night shift, and so they don't really get to see much of their kids or their husband or wife. Here we have a real conflict between time and money. The other side, among professionals, among lawyers, among bankers, among the elite in the United States, work and being busy is a mark of high social status. And so if you are a lawyer, when you're asked about what you're doing, you should say, I'm busy. Well, this means that kind of like dropping the hint that you are rich. This means that you are competent, in high demand. You have way more things to do, profitable ventures to do than you have time. It was not always so in the United States, and it is not so in Europe, for example, where the wealthy still prize leisure, and work, in fact, is considered kind of underneath them. They just own land and whatever, and they look down at the working class. In the United States, however, this sense of being busy as a mark of status is there, and I think that some time when the truth is, I'm taking it easy. Just say it. Just say it. And I hope that we all get in a time when we can take it easy, when we can really have a balance that we can afford between time and money, And we are fortunate if we are able to do that, because this life work balance, that is a luxury, and poor people do not have that luxury, and wealthy people sometimes can afford that luxury, but they don't take it because they think that it would imply that they are not sufficiently talented or successful in their careers.
It's scary to step away and take a break and even go on vacation. At least that's the American perspective. Europeans feel differently about them. You can't find them in August, and the whole month they're gone. So
Yeah.
It's a very different mindset. But speaking of that balance, when I was reading your book towards the end, I was thinking to myself, what would be a good day? And the thought that came to my mind would be a day that I don't even think about money. And what would it take not to think about money? And that made me think of a quote. It's a 100-year-old quote that I shared with you that my wife actually brought up in a conversation we had from Edith Wharton. And I thought it came from The Age of Innocence, but actually it's from The House of Mirth. My little research proved that it came from the other book. Either way, the quote is, "The only way not to think about money is to have a great deal of it." That's a 100-year-old quote. Do you think that still holds true today?
Yes, the essence of it is true. That is, if you are in a marriage, if there is not enough money, it is likely that husband and wife are going to get into arguments about what can we afford, what can we not, and that really is going to poison marriage. I think that having enough, such that I don't really look at what my wife is spending. You know, she is about as frugal or spendthrift as I am, but you know, she might make a contribution to some organization. She doesn't ask me for my permission. She doesn't consult me, and that really is something that enhances the well-being of both of us. And so it is. You know, I've seen wealthy people who are still so intent on increasing their wealth that they forget what it is for. Now, you know, that is when I go to the store, when I go to Trader Joe, I notice that the yogurt, that the Greek yogurt that I like, was $1.99, and then went to $2.49, and now it is $2.99. When I go to a store and I'm looking for sardines, I can see that some of them are $1.99, some at $2.49, and I pay attention to that as I choose. And then I'm kind of catch myself and say, "Hey, Meir, what difference does it make? It is $1. It is, so those kind of habits of thinking stay, but I don't let that get in the way. I can really afford to be generous, knowing that that $1 or $1,000 really mean less to me than to other people, and so I can be generous, helping them, and deriving well-being from being able to help other people. So again, you know, I'm not going to be here to enjoy the accolades of people I've been generous to when I'm in the other world. But it feels good even in this world to know that I am doing good for others, that there is a purpose to my life, that there are many things that I do that make my job a vocation, you know, more than a career. It is really being a professor is something that is part of me, a very important part of me as being a husband and a father. And another one is just being nice. You know, it does not really take a whole lot. Somebody, a young man, asked me for advice in his career and so on. I just said, be kind to everyone, high or low. It is good in a utilitarian sense that is people will remember that you are kind to them, and it will help later on because you might ask for a favor from them and so on. So, but it also is good just to here it is where you can do good for others, do good for yourself at the same time. Why not do that? Really, the same applies to sharing, to sharing your pains. You know, that is, all of us have some domains that are not going perfectly right for us. And so, as I just mentioned earlier, my older daughter lives with a mental illness. Well, we are fortunate that we have enough money such that we can support her without constraining our own budget. Uh, but it's more than that. You know, that is, for a long time, it was hard for me to share that information with others because, at least in the past, and perhaps even now, people think that if your daughter has some psychological problems, it must be something about the parents, you know, that caused that. But I found that I now share it freely, honestly, and people respond always with empathy. And many times they will tell me about different stories, different points of pain, as a one who was a colleague of mine, and we were talking, and I told him about my daughter, and as it turns out, his younger daughter has had a terrible traffic accident some years ago and had a serious brain injury, and now his life, the life of his family, revolves around helping that daughter. And so, you know, we comforted each other, and we turned from colleagues into friends, and that really is what you find. Every family, every person has those points of pain, and just being in the present, just being able to be open with people, prompt them to be open with you. And this applies very much to financial advisors. I think that financial advisors who are reluctant to make that cross that boundary between money and life are sometimes kind of private. You know, that is, they pretend that everything is fine with them and their family, and they, of course, don't open the door for others, for their clients, to tell them about their issues. And those issues again have financial aspects. It would be nice for financial advisors to disclose some things about their family, and I'm sure that many of them are doing just that, because when you do that, you open the door for others to say, yeah, you know, my problem is not that I cannot afford to send my kid to top expensive university. My problem is that my kid won't even go to community college. What do I do under those kinds of circumstances? You know, and that happened to us with our younger daughter. She didn't really want to go to college, and eventually she went to a professional school, and she acquired education to become an electronics technician, and she has done so well that in her last employment they promoted her to engineer because she was doing the work of engineer, and my wife and I were laughing. You know, here it is, we were tearing our hair out trying to get her to go to school, and somehow she managed to do what we hoped for her to do. And that is because somehow we managed to navigate it gently and we persuaded her to go to that professional college, vocational college, and eventually do well in her career and in her life.
It's a wonderful story. Congratulations. And I loved so many points that you brought up. And I wrote an article, Return on Kindness, when I came back from Omaha the year before last. And that was my impression of the meeting, that Buffett holds that it's all about kindness at the end. There are a lot of really kind people, and it really pays in the long run. To me, it's the only way to go, but it's a good reminder that kindness can get you places. I think that's the shortest way of looking at it. And I'm glad you brought up that.
It's going to make you happy. It's going to enhance your well-being.
Exactly, right? That's something that already pays off up front when you share it with other people. And I'm glad you brought up the personal aspect. So many people pointed out that the podcast that I'm doing and the writing that I do, that it's very personal. And some people even told me, how are you so comfortable? And I wasn't at the beginning so comfortable sharing my personal story, where I grew up and all those things. But I feel like clients sit down with me and share the most intimate aspects of their life. Money is a very intimate emotional experience. So if I can't be open to them, how could they be open to me? So it's a leap of faith. It's a moment of vulnerability, but I think that's the only way to go. Professor, I could keep you all day, but I have one last question. I'm very curious about your definition of success. How do you think about success?
Well, I come back to the notion of well-being. I think that I think of well-being as a portfolio. That is, there are many domains. There is money, there's family, there's health, and so on. It is kind of like a stock portfolio. Some stocks are going to have fabulous returns. Some of them are going to stink. We tend to focus many times on those that are in loss. And we say, why is it that this happened? And so on. But I think that as an advisor, you try to guide your investors, your clients, to see their portfolio as a whole. And you say, the reason I recommend the diversification is because I don't know which of them are going to be winners and losers. This is why we have all of them. And I know that some of them are going to be losers, but I know that I cannot identify it right now. Well, the same applies to life portfolio. That is, in my case, it is my daughter who is ill, who is kind of the losing stock in my portfolio. Winning portfolio, well, my financial situation is really very good. But I look at my portfolio as a whole, and I say I'm able to support my ill daughter. My younger daughter loves and supports her older sister. So when I look at my portfolio as a whole, I say I'm successful. I've done what is necessary. I teach my students. That brings me a lot of satisfaction. That is success. When I see them getting the point, inquiring, that to me is success. When I write things and people read them and it makes them think, that is a success. And so that really is what it is. That is, I am realizing that I cannot be a billionaire. I cannot be a Nobel Prize winner, but I say, you're a success, Meir. A small success, a minor success, but a success nevertheless.
I love it, and I highly recommend your wonderful book and many other books that you wrote, but the one that I spent the most time with the last few weeks, it's called A Wealth of Well-Being, A Holistic Approach to Behavioral Finance. Professor, thank you so much for today. It was such a wonderful conversation. I learned a lot, and I know what a remarkable job you've done collecting all the research, all these ideas in this book, and I know we just touched on a handful. There's so much more in the book. But I think it's a wonderful introduction for this audience to explore more about the work that you do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Bogumil. It is wonderful to speak with you, and I hope to speak with the people who are going to listen to this podcast.
You were listening to Talking Billions. We talk about big ideas, big inspirations, big topics. We take on the hardest subject of all, money. But our conversations lead us to an even bigger question: what it means to live a rich life beyond money. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and follow, subscribe, rate, and share with friends and family. We rely on word of mouth to promote the show. One click for you means the world to us. Thank you. Until next time, your host, Bogumil Baranowski.